Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 24 of the Current Review podcast. Today we have on Suresh, Arya, and Will Berry. Will is the Chief Development Officer, and Suresh is the founder and current CEO. And what EV Buddy is it is a new technology that allows two EVs to DC fast charge each other. We're going to go really into the details in this in a little bit. But first off, this is a pretty cool concept. So how did you found this company and what was your inspiration behind it?
Um, I I'm an early adapter. I am the guy who first bought Palm Pilot, so I always look for new shiny toys. And when the electric cars came out, I wanted to buy one, but I had some hesitation that range anxiety would be a problem. And then I did some research, and because of my electrical engineering background, so I needed to solve this problem. I looked around; they were towing cars, and they at that point there was no other solution. So I said, okay, there is jumper cables for the fossil fuel cars, 12-volt cars. Why don't we have something for electric cars? So then there were like some bottlenecks, like you need to handshake with the charger ports, and then the voltages. There is slight differences between the each car model, things like that. So I dug deeper into what all the options that we need to solve to have some device like this. Um, then I kind of put it on shelf. I solved the problem, but I didn't do anything about it. But during COVID, my daughters were staying with me, with my family, so we were kind of had cabin fever. So we just went out for shopping one day to a mall, and that was a planned trip to go to one mall and come back. I had enough charge, but we changed the plans in between to go to another mall, and that's when I didn't have enough charge. So I went to look for a charge nearby. I couldn't find anything high speed. I just found a level 2 charger, and I had to sit there hour and a half to charge in the dark, dingy night. So then on the way back to a supercharger, which was 16 miles away, I almost ran my Tesla to zero. So my daughters asked, like, Dad, you said you solved this problem. Why you didn't do anything about it? So then that kind of moved me over the edge to develop this product. So I think in 2023 or 24, 22, I went through a Clean Tech Open. It's a business accelerator. It's one of the largest clean tech business accelerator in the country or even in the world. So me and my partner Henry, we joined the program. So we completed the program, and then we started developing this product. So that's the genesis of this.
Cool. Now, can you tell me a little bit about the technology behind this? Because this is DC to DC, at least all the ones I'm familiar with that do vehicle to vehicle are on AC. So, can you tell me about this and um, what sort of hardware's differences are used in here?
Yeah, I think we are basically we can do V2X. Basically, you can discharge one electric car, which has a bidirectional capability, and then we convert that car to be a power source, and then we need to adjust the voltages, because if one car
Mhm.
is about 350 volts, the other car needs 400 volts. So we need to boost that voltage to drive the other car, charge the other car. So we have integrated both the technologies into one box, and it's a size of a right now it's the size of a suitcase, but we can shrink it down to half the size.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And now, I think one big question I have is at least when it comes to the vehicles that are charging each other, is there any concern when it comes to like warranties? Because maybe some automakers may not want their cars DC fast charging other cars. So is there some considerations in that realm?
I think as technically, I'm because I'm an engineer, I can talk about it. Is that it's like you're feeding the wheels, the motors. It's discharging, so
Mhm.
it's discharging at a even very fast rate because when you are speeding, right? So there is no technical hurdle, but there if there is any business hurdle because some manufacturer doesn't want to do it, is just a thing that needs to be addressed. But other than that, it's basically it's behaving like it doesn't care whether you're discharging to charge another car or powering a wheel. So it's the same thing for the electrons.
Mhm.
So we think there is no problem as far as transferring degradation of the car or anything, any electronics of it. It's not affecting. It's actually practically very safe.
Cool. Interesting. Now, I guess maybe this is a question for you, Will. But when it comes to marketing these devices, is this going to be more towards like a company who would you be like, all right, I'm running out of charge. I'm going to call someone. A vehicle EV will come out, DC fast charge my car, and then leave, or is this something more for the consumer?
This product is always intended to be commercial facing. So ultimately, you're always going to be helping that person who is, at least in certain usages, stuck on the side of the road. But in terms of who our targets are, it's a very target rich environment in terms of the groups that we're looking at that we feel could really maximize the use of the power share unit, which is part of the EV Buddy suite of products. It's really our flagship product.
Mhm.
Um, I can tell you from my personal experience, just as a little bit of background intro to me, I've been in the electric vehicle space since 2011, my initial experience was working for a wholly owned subsidiary of Mercedes-Benz. It was called Car2Go. No longer exists, but essentially it was micro car rentals, so app based, and then you could start and end a rental just right off the side of the road. So you don't have to go to, for example, the airport to pick up your car in a home area. You can go and find that car. So fast forward to me starting here in San Diego, which is where I'm based out of. We had an electric vehicle fleet. I had 400 cars that I needed to manage. And so the number one thing that I think that EVBuddy will be very helpful for is that fleet manager. So whether it's a municipal fleet manager or a commercial fleet manager, what we're starting to see, and the trends are there, we're starting to see more and more electric vehicles incorporated into fleets. And especially on that municipality side, certainly here in California, there's downward pressure from the government onto fleet managers to increase the number of electric vehicles that they have in their fleet. People want to get more EVs in their fleet, but sometimes those internal combustion engines that the fleet managers used to, it's a big switch to go from to electric vehicles. So that person, ultimately has a responsibility to take care of those cars that are out in the field. So this is that device that does it. Instead of now the fleet manager having to call a tow service to reclaim one of his or her own vehicles, now they have the power share unit by EV Buddy that they can take into their EV and then boom, charge electric vehicle to electric vehicle, much more efficient, and then it creates a lot more uptime for that vehicle as opposed to, again, having a tow service come and reclaim that car. So the short answer to your question is I see fleet management as one of the number one groups that this could benefit, but certainly it goes beyond that. It goes beyond just roadside assistance for a commercial unit or for managing your municipal EV fleet.
Interesting. Yeah, because I could imagine, at least on the consumer front, someone would like to have one of these in their car just in case of an emergency that someone else driving an EV could pull over and then charge them up.
Yeah. Well, we're looking at it as a service, essentially, and I'm not sure if everybody's making this up, but mobile charging as a service, which, there's a lot of software as a service, et cetera. So this is like mobile charging as a service. But beyond this, the service aspect, absolutely, we're looking at it for commercial sales.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's really interesting because I'm sure there's kind of a lot of tangent points that you can go off of with this technology. And then I'm sure right now for you guys is finding what is the best thing to do with the technology right now, because I could just see lots of applications for this.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with Lucid. They make a fantastic car. My guess is from your experience working with them, the pace of the evolution of the EV industry it just goes so fast. Sometimes you almost need to go, hey, slow down. There's so many different things happening, but we're actually delighted to be a disruptor of sorts, or at least a provider of a service that's really an aspirin to the pain point of that EV owner that's stuck on the side of the road. It's a very lonely feeling when you're watching all that traffic pass by and you're just stuck in place.
Yeah. And so right now with the product, so where would you say EV Buddy is on the line of product development? Are there prototypes out right now that you've all tested with, or where's the current positioning?
So right now we've got 2 betas of the PowerShare unit, both being tested all the time, and also importantly in cold weather. Suresh is based in Edison, New Jersey. It's pretty darn cold at this time of year. As electric vehicle owners know, the cold dramatically affects how the services or how the electrons pass through. So testing it in a cold environment right now, we actually look at it as a tremendous benefit, which is really cool. In terms of our product pipeline, already talked about the PowerShare unit. That is our flagship. But in addition to that, we also have our line extensions for EV Charger 2.0, which is going to be DC fast charge stations that are, as 2.0 would suggest, better than your average bear, better than a lot of the services that are being currently provided for charging, with enhanced reliability. Andrew, you are a great student of electric vehicles, and I think that you know that reliability as it relates to charging units is one of the greatest pain points that EV owners have. So frustrating to get to a charging station alone and then not be backed up because there's 3 or 4 cars in front of you. And then all of a sudden you realize that the unit's not working because of some technical glitch. It's a difficult situation to be in. So reliability is one of the high selling points for our Charger 2.0, as well as a really massive screen that we want to endeavor to use for advertising opportunities, which would create a funding stream for the host of the station. They would be able to get additional revenues. So almost like if you're familiar with Volta, which has got a model that's entirely based on advertising, this kind of gets you some of the way there. So, and then to wrap up our product suite, all this will be managed through the app, and you can see a made-up image of what the app would look like on Suresh's screen.
Cool.
Yeah. And we have other stuff in the pipeline, V2G and some other things, but while that's important, it's not our focus. It's a great future-facing thought, but we're really focused on our holy trinity of 3 things: the PowerShare unit, Charger 2.0, and our app.
Mm-hmm. And then how would you go about doing like vehicle to grid, for instance? Because if you would be discharging DC to the grid, because grid's AC, I'm sure there would have to be some extra, because I mean, at least with some of the current offerings on the market, since it's AC, you will just convert the DC from the battery to AC and then feed it back into the grid. So would you be looking at AC for that, or do you have any?
On this point, I want to let the experts speak. One thing I want to be fully transparent on. I'm an MBA, I'm not an engineer. And also, again, these are future plans. So, it's not fully gestated. It's not fully baked on our side, but I'll go quiet and I'll let Suresh tackle that one.
Yeah, I think I worked with renewable energy for more than a decade. So I also was part of a solar inverter company a decade ago. So we are very familiar with the mini grids, V2G. So the product pipeline, we are already doing for discharging from a vehicle, we are already doing V2X, but basically it's a V2G technology. So we can convert the DC back to AC to feed the grid. So that's part of our pipeline. But I think at this point, it's very early, and we think it'll take some time. So we have two other products in front of it to grow the market, get the branding awareness. So we want to complete that. But I think our product roadmap, has that as a extension of this the, service.
Cool. And I think on a similar note, talking more about vehicles. So I would assume this uses probably a similar standard to normal charging, just the ISO 15118 to communicate between vehicles. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
CCS protocol, and I think it's also the same thing is compatible with NACS the Tesla has. So
Okay.
we are doing using the fast charge protocol.
Yeah, because because there's so many different EVs on the market right now with all different voltages. Like you have very high voltage EVs like Lucids that are pushing over 900 volts, and then you have some lower voltage EVs like the Chevy Equinox. So how do you ensure that this product can work with pretty much every EV on the market?
Yeah, right now I think all this 900 volts or 800 volts product line, they are backward compatible with 400. So it's almost like trying to build a huge pipe and you're not sending enough. So we think since our capacity is only 20 kilowatts, and I think we will probably build a 40 kilowatt unit also,
Okay.
because one of our customer has requested to build one. So we will build it because they want it, because they don't want their employees or workers standing by, or it's not efficient, right? You're going to spend half hour versus 15 minutes. They want to be in and out. So we can build. We have the technology now, but it's the unit economics is going to drive it. But because you don't want to just build and not use that kind of capacity. But I think we don't have any limitation on our technology, because the pipes that we have, the controllers we have, handles those.
Okay, cool. And so you're saying right now the current unit does 20 kilowatts and there's a potential 40 kilowatt one in the pipeline. Is that correct?
Yes. And also we have another one that's a little bit lower, like you were alluding to, a homeowner, or we are basically a EV driver centric company. So we want to think, in that's how I think about, how would I be using these things. So we are also thinking of another way to do is like a peer-to-peer charging. So in our app, you can go and find another nearby provider and request the charge. So they have, you don't have the unit, they have the unit, and they have the charge card. They will bring it to you. So we are building that peer-to-peer network also, apart from the hardware itself.
So that's an interesting network. So how would that work? Would that kind of function like a DoorDash style of product where there would be like people who would work as mobile chargers? Could you explain that a little bit more? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's like a shared economy or gig economy, right? So we will certify those providers using our partners. We are not, we are a technology company, but we will use a roadside assistance company. They will vet these drivers or providers, and they will be on our network. So when they subscribe to our app, they become a driver or a provider. So when our the end user, the customer needs the service, they go request the service like an Uber car. So they will send them to your place. So that there are two things we are solving. We don't want some stranger to come and create a problem, because you want to be vetted, and we don't want a stranger requesting also, because on the other end of the security, because you don't want somebody to do something harmful to the other person. So we are like a neutral network, like a Airbnb or something, to vet both parties so that we can connect them. So that's our value add in our service.
Okay. And then as for cost, I would assume this would probably cost more than going to a traditional DC fast charger just because someone else will be driving to you.
Yeah, because it's a labor is involved, and also the cost of like the uh, car gets depreciated, right? Because if you're using their battery, so we need to account for that. But yeah, it's a little bit more, but less than the tow. So and also the way we have modeled it, it will be the fastest you can get, because let's say even both tow and the charging is the same price, but if we have more, we are like a distributed network. We have so many providers that might be closer to you to come than the tow, which could be farther out. It's like a centralized. So then they need to come. So we want to build the network where you get, because you don't want to be, your time is valuable. And so we want to build. And one other thing we didn't mention is that we could also be a convenience charge. It doesn't have to be always emergency charge. So you live in an apartment or you live in some location, you don't have the facility, so you can have somebody come and deliver the charge, or you're at a Starbucks or a coffee shop, you want somebody to come deliver. I think, like you initially said, there are so many applications for this we never thought about because this device didn't exist. So I think we think there will be so many applications that will come along that we would be surprised. I think, but we have thought of few things on our own, my team. But I think we will be happy to find out more people are using it different ways, that they need it because their boat needed a charge. I don't know. It could be that.
Mhm.
And Andrew, if I could just layer on top of what Suresh was mentioning, especially as it relates to multi-unit dwellings, um, one of the challenges for charging is multi-unit dwellings. When you have a concentration of people, many of whom might have the EV charger, but yet maybe it's a 200-unit apartment complex, but they only have 3 or 4 chargers out front that are constantly in use. Well, then it's a game to try to make sure that you're in the front of that line. So multi-unit dwellings, I would suggest personally, that solution for that has not made itself available yet. This is one of those great services that can slide in before that multi-unit dwelling charging solution is really provided at a larger scale. So this is something that could slide in very neatly and nicely for some of the major complexes that you see being built where they have hundreds and hundreds of units.
Interesting. Now, I've talked with another startup before about charging as a service, so mobile vehicle charging. Is this something that you both looked deeply into and saw a customer interest in it? Because I've heard about it. I've done like a little bit of research, but honestly, I've not found a lot regarding that. Is this like how feasible do you think this business model could be?
I would personally suggest it's certainly feasible, and in terms of competition in the marketplace, there are other types of mobile charging as a service providers that are out there. There's one in particular that actually what they essentially have is a rolling battery on wheels. So whereas with EV Buddy and the power share device, it's just transferring electrons from one vehicle to the other. In this case, it's actually a battery that is inside of a very large, we'll call it a Sprinter type van, that goes around and essentially does the exact same thing. It delivers the charge to you on the spot. But I would suggest that while that's an interesting solution, and one company that we looked at has received significant investment from some very well-known investors, it seems very clunky to me in comparison to our solution, which is very efficient and very streamlined by comparison. Both of them do the same thing. They deliver a charge to a person in need at a spot. But I would suggest that the way that we're doing it, it's a little bit more efficient, and certainly does not require all of the. We're talking about a power share device, one unit, as opposed to now buying a Sprinter van and buying all of the batteries that are associated with it, and then stacking those up inside of your van to then go out and deliver a charge.
Yeah, because I can imagine someone maybe at an apartment complex could click on the app that they're looking for a charge, or maybe there's someone who happens to be leaving the city at the same time and they're about to go home and charge at their house, and then maybe they could share that power with someone else.
Yeah. And I don't want to put too fine a point of it, but I do see it as one of the great selling points of the PowerShare unit is when you're talking about a mile a minute discharge, that's a pretty good pace. To think that in 15 minutes you could get 15 miles of range, for those people who are EV owners or EV curious, have some EV experience, could be a lifesaver. I mean, just that extra 15 miles get you home or get you to that next charging station that you want to be at.
Yeah. And then, so how do you view EV Buddy in the context of the future of electrification? Because I know there's a big idea towards a microgrid future. How do you see EV Buddy fitting within that?
So I think, as I said, we are in the charging. If you all our products and services are focused on charging, so we will probably work on the entire chain. As I said, we are building a community of EV owners, right? So we want to be able to provide them with a service where they can help each other, or also they can make money. Like if you belong to our network, you can have your car plugged into our network, then we can feed the grid. Because when you have a brownouts, stuff like that, we can send power back to the grid, and then whenever time of day the tariffs are low, you can charge the car at night. So we can do all. We are agnostic doing all those things.
Cool.
And I'll just add on top of that, and this is much more general, but when you talk about where the market is today, Suresh and I were, Suresh and I were just in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago for the Consumer Electronics Show, CES. And if you go there, you're always going to be amazed by the technology that's shown. And one of my observations, at least, was there was a tremendous focus, not just on AI, but the integration of software into electric vehicles. It wasn't even so much that people were showing off electric vehicles like it was a car show. It was this focus on this integration of software into the car and how it's expanding and growing all the time. And looking at that, I personally took a lot of hope from that. Seeing software as a service is important, but there's got to be room for mobile charging as a service and the type of idea that EV Buddy is bringing with our product suite.
Interesting. And now, as we start to wrap up this conversation, I'd love to ask, what are the next steps in EV Buddy, and when can someone charge their car via someone else's car via an EV Buddy unit?
Let me take that call, and I think we'll wrap it up. So right now, December 8th, we launched our beta service in New Jersey. So if we have select people who have registered, we will deliver the service to them whenever they need. So we are on the trials right now, and we are trying to deploy at least additional 4 more vehicles to 4 more units, so that we might cover New York area, Manhattan also, because we are 35 miles from Manhattan. So we will deliver in Manhattan the service, and Will is in California. We're going to be launching 4 more units in California right after this, so that people will. We are also collecting some data and test information. So once that's done, then we go into the commercial launch. That's where we are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. That's awesome, Suresh. And just to continue and pick up where you left off, and of course to level set, we're pre-Series A. We are a startup. We are young and we're hungry, and we have a great idea within an ecosystem that we think is going to work. In terms of what we're looking ahead when we talk about, what's your roadmap, what's your go-to-market, I feel personally as the chief development officer, like a kid in the candy shop. There's almost too many applications that I can think of. And I've already touched on things like municipalities. I've already touched on ideas like roadside service, roadside assistance, but there's so much more to that. So what we are very excited about the future. I'd urge people who are curious to please go to our website at evbuddy.net. It's very easy to click on the contact page to reach out to Suresh and I. And then, of course, for those who are watching, I think I'm pointing in the right direction, but you can see my contact information right there. So yeah, we're definitely fired up, but we also know that Suresh and I have some long days and long nights ahead of us to get us where we need to be. Thank you, Andrew.
I bet. And for someone who lives in New Jersey and wants to maybe be a beta tester, is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can email me sarya@evbuddy.net, and we will qualify them and sign them up. So we are happy to service them.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Suresh and Will. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Andrew, for your time. And
Yeah, Andrew, thank you. You're doing great stuff. I'm really impressed with with your logic and with your experience, especially at and I mean this is a compliment, at your young age. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.